Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about the 10 most and the must tools which are used by every Java developer in software development. So if you have previously worked in any IT giant companies, you must have come across this. But for the people who are not aware, like and are looking out for tools and libraries, right? So this video will be very helpful for them. I will be telling you the like I've been working in the IT giants for more than 15 years, so I am well aware of which organization uses which tools, right? So and which tools are very helpful for the developer. So they will make their life very easy. Okay. So let's jump into the slides. Now, the very first thing when any developer starts, right? So earlier there was no, uh, I'm talking about long back. Earlier it used to be on, let's say, if you are working on Java, right? And you used to open the command prompt, you compile it, and then run the Java programs, right? As days on passing and the evolution is going on, the new versions are is being released. There are better ways and easy ways to uh, do the development. Now there are many online browsers, online code available. But when it comes to the security, when it comes to trustworthy, right, and when we are working with any clients, right, um, ID matters the most because it will help the developer to be productive, and also it will make their life easy. Okay, so this is where ID comes into picture, and based on the development mode, right? You're doing the front end development or the back end development, it might vary with the different IDEs. So integrated development environment. Okay, so majorly, if you see the major part of the IT giants or major parts of the client, the banking, finance industry, telecom, or any domain you take it, right? The majority of this particular IDE is used as an IntelliJ for the Java development, or Spring Boot or Kafka, whatever you name it, right? Integrated development, the IntelliJ is one of the top choice. Okay, then there are Eclipse as in one of the IDE. There are NetBeans, Visual Code, which is for development of front end. So now, which I've named IntelliJ, Eclipse, NetBeans. There is also a separate Spring Boot related IDE, which comes and it comes as a jar, and then you have to extract it, and then you can. This is on top of the Eclipse version. Okay, but at the core it is Eclipse, and then the Spring tool suite it is called. Okay, it is called Spring suite. Okay, uh, STS, it is called STS. Okay, so majority, as I said, IntelliJ is one of the major one, and when it comes to front end, the Visual Code is one is used. So whether you are using Angular, whether you are using React JS, whether you are working on NPM and Node PM, Node.js, right? So these all will helpful. Visual Code will be very helpful for it. Okay. There are other of them, but this is one of the best and trustworthy. If you want to work on the cloud-based browser-based IDE, then AWS Cloud9 is one of them, and which is one of the AWS service, right? So the purpose of IDE is basically it simplifies your coding, debugging, and the project management, the module, how it is being structured. So it is quite easy to structure. And if you, let's say, just get an example, if when you're working with any Maven project, what you have to do is that simply open that particular project. Your ID will open that, it will structure it, it will show you in such way, and then you will be able to develop that. So this makes your life very easy when it comes to development. Okay. Now there are AI-based features being introduced in the IDE. I mean, there are some paid version, there are some plugins available. Okay, so integrated IDE which comes up with a lot of plugins, features, right? So choose wisely when it comes to IDE, because it matters a lot when it comes to plugins. Like if you see IntelliJ, right, or Eclipse, any of them, right? it has got the integration with the plugins, which is SonarQube. Now, which ultimately, which will improve your code, the bug or the duplicate code, right? If there are certain features available which are integrated, it improves your efficiency, productivity, your development code. Your code will be quite clear and concise. Okay, hope the importance of IDU you got it. Okay, and let's move on to the next slide. Now build tools. Okay, now after choosing the IDE, right, the very next thing is that what kind of projects your uh, build tools are using it, right? So how your project is going to build up and deploy. Okay, that also is going to matter a most, and also it's quite important, and also you master it so that you get in-depth knowledge, and when you're trying to build a jar, war, or any of them, right, it will be helpful. Okay, this will XML files, let's say in Maven, right, there is a pom.xml where you define the dependencies, and when you're dealing with let's say the Spring Boot, right, there is an dependency, that the parent and the child dependency, right? So those matters, and then that will be quite important part of them. And uh, let's say what you used to earlier used to do is that I'm talking about very long. There was a structure. There used to be an SRC folder. Then you have the packages, and then you have the Java classes or this. Then you have to compile it. Then you have to fire a command to make it as a jar file, right? So earlier this process was there. Now this build tools been in picture. It makes your life easy to build, deploy, and test it, right? So I've come across various build tools. One Maven is one of the uh, most used, and also recently Gradle has got quite vast people using it. Okay, and Ant was priorly used. Now it has not been much used up, but yeah, TeamCity, Ansible, GitLab, these are one of the tools which are majorly used across the IT giants and the clients which are working on major IT projects, right? So what the benefit we get with this particular build tool is that we there is an automatic dependency management, like it will automatically download your dependencies. Your project can be built, test, clean, and then you can test it, right? So it is quite efficient when it comes to your project setup, build, and deployment process. Okay, this will uh, I will say, like, if you have certain skills, right, it will add value to your thing, right? So make sure you learn this. Now, uh, as when you're working with any of the major IT projects or a giant site, so version control system is quite important, because ultimately there are hundreds of developers, hundreds of people working on some features, and some development, right? So it's very difficult to track each developer's commits, how to review them, how what code to be pushed in, so that there is no, I mean, everything is checked and reviewed, and then it is pushed in, tested, and then it is pushed to the production, right? So version control system plays a very important role. So it manages your source code versions, and it also collaborate with multiple team. Let's say some team is sitting in Mumbai, some team is sitting in US, some team is sitting in US, France, or somewhere, right? So it will be quite helpful when you have a central version control system, and when you daily commit this particular code, every other team gets the updates, and also they are able to see your the code changes which are being developed, tested, and then it's going to the production. So there are certain version control system. So Git is one of the most popular. So it has got GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. There are previously like SVN, Subversion. Now it comes to cloud, right? That we have AWS Code Commit. There is Mercurial as well, right? So these are the important tools, I would say, which will be definitely be helpful for you. And let's say if you are a newcomer, you wanted to know like what is the overall infrastructure, overall way of IT giants working, right, when it comes to dealing with clients. Because if you see this version control system, let's say Git example, right? So let's say you have an IT giant company, and then they have their client, which is, let's say example, any of the health organization or any banking client. Now the banking client doesn't want their code to be available to the IT giants, right? They will give their infrastructure to them, and then the IT team, the IT giant team can work over there in their environment, okay, so that they doesn't expose this particular code to the external environment. Even though they again trying to get the access, it is like very much in the control environment. You cannot download, and you cannot copy it, okay, so it's very strict, okay. So as I mentioned, it gives an benefit of collaborating with multiple teams. It can track what people are working on, what changes, okay, whether this particular code is efficient, quite efficiently written, it is well maintained and written, right? So everything you can take care of at one, in one picture, right? So there is an access where you can actually look at it, who is committing what kind of code it is committing, how many bugs is introducing. All things can be taken care from one view, okay. So this gives a clear picture of it. Now, dependency management. Now, as I mentioned, when you're dealing with Maven and other, right, there is a central repository where your dependencies. Let's say you doesn't want any external dependencies, okay. So you want certain trustworthy dependencies to be available in your environment, and then you doesn't want any external environments to be done. So you can restrict that with the dependency management. Like there are JFrog, Artifactory, Apache Ivy, Nexus, Apache Archive, right? So there are different uh, library which can be managed, and you have your control to which particular versions or which particular library you can download or restrict, right? So it will not allow any, let's say you have a number of developers, right? You have to give them that particular access control and the username password along with the necessary other repository, so that only those particular authorized and permitted libraries can be downloaded and work on. Because nowadays there are n number of libraries, you never know, hacker might introduce some library and later it can be a compromise to that particular system, right? It can expose everything, right? So that plays a very important role. So it has to be very consistent. Let's say you are working on across one some features, right? So overall your team is segregated into different location, but your with that particular dependency management, it ensures that your code is consistent, streamlined, and have the proper centralized dependency management, okay. Now testing frameworks. Now what happens is that overall the life cycle of taking the requirement, developing it, testing, unit testing it, right? So this phase comes where your development is done. Now you have to unit test it, right? So there are different testing aspects and different ways of testing, which is called behavioral testing, unit testing, integrated testing. So there are quite different testings, okay. Now when it comes to specifically unit testing, now we have a certain tools like JUnit framework, we have TestNG, Mockito for mocking some certain data layers of other layers, right, to in order to test it, right. Selenium, which is used for testing, right, automated testing. Now we have Spock, right. I've written the TestNG twice, but I ignore it. The purpose is that the whatever piece of code you have written, right, the developer has to unit test it, each component whatever it is written, right. And ultimately after that there are different, as I mentioned, integration testing is there, mocking the testing is there, so that your code is thoroughly tested before it reaches the production, okay. Now the benefit of this is that it improves your code quality, and it maintains the trust from the client that the better code is coming and efficient code is coming, and there are no bugs introduced, right. It ensure their trustability on it, okay. Now code quality and analyzing tools. There are certain let's say you are doing the development, as I previously mentioned sonar cube, right? Now this particular tools, okay, what it does is that it analyzes the code, whatever it has been written, it checks for bugs, vulnerabilities, maintainability, duplication, code, okay, code smells. So it checks overall the code, whatever it has been written, okay, and it checks, like, if the code is improving the quality, it is degrading the quality, it is introducing some bugs or not. So these tools are quite important, and I would say it can be integrated or part of the plugins of the integrated development IDE, right? So this many giant organization has uses this particular tool, so to as a first level or a second level check, so that many vulnerabilities, code smell, constants, related things are suppressed and it doesn't comes and go to the production mistakenly, right? So now there are 2 3 levels of checks done, like, we have the sonar cube, then the review is done, then second level review is done, ultimately before going to the production the testing is been happening. So there are multiple level of checks done, but this ensures that your code is of optimum quality, and it is of highest quality and standards, right? So sonar cube is one of the tool, check style is one of the tool, PMD, spot bugs, find bugs. Find bug used to be, quite earlier we used to use it in the organizations, but nowadays sonar cube, check style, the some of them are paid and some of them, like, crucial is there, right? Some of them paid, some of them are free, right? So it's quite helpful. It will help be helpful when it comes to code review, right? It will before the code is getting reviewed, you can actually spot that and fix it. So it will give you an edge. Now, logging tools. Now, this quite plays a very important role, because centralized logging system quite plays a very important role. Okay, whatever it is happening in certain microservices, certain application, it can actually, with the help of the logs, can understand what went wrong, what is going properly, if there is any events happening. Like, this gives a multiple view to the user, what system is what internally the system is, happening inside it, right? So there are different tools like log4j, slfj, logback, right? So these are the libraries and the tools which are useful for the developer, which you doesn't need to write your own code and then certain logic of writing info, debug, log levels, right? So these are all provided libraries which we can make use of it. You have to add the dependency and then it is simply available for development. Now, based on this particular logging, there are certain tools which will be able to process that particular data, like Splunk, Prometheus, and other data, Kibana. This will aggregate that particular data, and you can look into this particular things. So it's kind of debugging and monitoring tool for certain exceptions or certain logging information. The system is working properly or not. The system is up or not. Is there any new kind of exception being handled? So this will give a clear picture. Now, containerization and orchestration. Now, this plays a very important role when it comes to after the development testing, unit testing in the local environment by the developer, right? So, the developer itself can test in this particular containerization, so that it his code. Now, you must have heard a popular term of my code is working in my environment, but it is not working in another environment. Now, this particular concern is addressed by this particular containerization or orchestration tools. What happens is that it provides a certain environments for the application to run. So that will be very quite uniquely and consistently available to across the organization, or across wherever it has been downloaded and run, right? So it gives a similar environment, not similar, I think same environment with the same set of I would say environment, exactly the features, library, Java environment, right? So whatever it is available inside it. So Docker is one of them. Kubernetes helps in that. Uh, Recently, like Podman been coming into, I would say, coming in with the latest things, right? So I have a video which mentions what is the difference and which one to use when when you compare with Docker to Podman, right? Now, as I mentioned, it is used for scaling purpose, and you can simply deploy it and scale your application, right? So it will be quite helpful when it comes to deployment. Now, this particular containerization organization orchestration, it's quite efficient and it is quite useful in when it comes to microservice environment, and where there is an crunch of or you need to make your application quite efficient in terms of resource utilization. So this plays a very pivotal role. So I hope this is clear. Now, database management. Now you have your IDE, you have your tools, build tools and other, but ultimately where the data comes from, right? So there are database tools, right? Management tools, right? We have Hibernate, we have Flyway, Liquibase. These are the tools where it will help your database related, whether it is SQL, Oracle, or MongoDB, what kind of scripts which needs to be executed, right? These are the management database management tools, right? So it will help you to create your database schema and execute those, right? uh, so it can interact with the database, it can create the schema, it can run the queries, it can run the store procedure, etc., right? So that your data which is required at the start of your application, or it is required for your application to run, right, it is available. And also across, like if you are performing some operations, right, it will be quite helpful. Okay. So it's quite efficient, it's consistent for handling the data, right? So these are the tools which are used, like Hibernate, Flyway, and Liquibase. Now there are monitoring, performance monitoring and profiling tools. I have used most of them in my across, like the experience. So it will analyze your application, what is the performance, if there is any certain bottlenecks, right? Is there any issue, like if there is any lag in your application. So this will give you a clear a picture, a graph based, or certain class level information, which can give you a detailed information from where the request, whether the user hits the request till the data it picks up from the database, or any other, it calls any API, which API it is calling, how many times it is calling, what is that lag, how many seconds it took to process that particular request, what kind of query, what kind of class it is called, what kind of library, which server. Let's say you have production, testing, feature environment, so it will actually give you in which environment there is a problem, how many request has been raised in certain request. Let's say for some organization it is quite important that um, in this particular time base, this many request has to be processed, or this should be completed in certain timeline. So this particular monitoring tools plays a quite important and the pivotal role. So there are certain tools, let's say your application is not performing well, so there are certain tools which will analyze your code, your application, whether it will decide whether it is an application level problem, or whether it is a network related problem, whether it's a database problem, whether it's a memory problem. So this gives you a clear picture, so that you can identify and come to a resolution. So this will give you a root, I would say root cause for where exactly this particular issue is happening. So it will fix that particular bottleneck. So what happens is that in terms of that, when you try to identify those, you will able to optimize your memory usage. You can improve your efficiency of your application. Okay. So Visual VM is there, JProfiler is there, Yorkit is there, Eternity is an paid version. AppDynamic also is a paid version. Prometheus is used for log monitoring and other, Splunk, data log. So these are the tools which are used in the major IT giants and the organizations, which makes or help the developer to monitor tools. Now, as we discuss a lot of tools across right now, These are some of the other tools which are the day-to-day activities of the developer, which will be helpful. Now, when it comes to API testing, right? Tools like we have Postman. I mean, we have developed the API, right? You have Spring Boot application. You have developed your REST API. Now, how to test it, right? So there are certain tools like Postman, SOAP UI, Swagger, OpenAI. Swagger or OpenAI, both with the version difference is there, and Apache JMeter for load testing, right? How your application is behaving when you're doing the load testing. Now collaboration tools are there. Now many organizations maintain their documentation, or let's say certain requirement is getting clarification. How do the, like, they follow the agile methodology, right? So the requirement comes in the phases and they want it to be delivered in certain scrum sprint, right? So Jira plays a quite important role. Confluence also is used for maintaining the documentation. So earlier used to be a documentation. Now Confluence is a new way where the organization maintain their architecture diagrams, documents, their calendars, their meeting invites, MON, all kind of information is stored in it. Okay, so this is quite important. So for the newcomer who are not aware of this particular infrastructure or these tools, right, it will be quite helpful for them to know, to visualize, like, these are the tools used up, and then they can slowly start learning this particular, so that when they are working on any of the projects, right, it will be not new to them. Okay, so CI/CD. So when it comes to build tool and deployment, right, so Jenkins plays a quite important role. So let's say you have developed your code, committed it, and then ultimately you want to deploy it in certain server, right? So Jenkins plays a quite important role. There are Circle CI, different tools which are available for the deployment. So it is integrated with SonarQube, it is integrated with testing tools. So it will, in all, it will integrate their own testing, the code improvement, call plugins and other stuff, and then it will ultimately deploy it. Okay, so it will I would say reduce the manual intervention, right? Now these are I would say, I mean, according to my experience, I have actually, there might be many more tools which I might not be available, but these are, I would say, across 70% of them or 80% of them which are being used up, and definitely which will be helpful for you. Hope this video was helpful to you, for both newcomers, freshers, and inexperienced and experienced guys. And if you happen to, this video if have happened to helpful to you, please share it across the other needful people. And I would say, if you have not subscribed, liked, or shared my videos, right, so please do that. And I would love to hear your comments if there is any improvement or a certain, let's say you wanted some videos which I need to make it, right. So you can comment it in the comment section, so that I can look out and then prepare on it.